What's up? This is Stevan and
Lemery with DL Training Systems.
And we're here today to talk about the do's and don'ts
of strength and conditioning.
Before we get into it, guys, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and turn your notification bells on. And make sure to check the link in descriptions, guys, if you want to see how I train with my strength and conditioning with DL Training Systems, the wizard himself.
Appreciate it. Yeah, so let's touch on the do's and don'ts of strength and conditioning, but I think the most important thing is let's kind of hear your background when you were at Michigan, kind of what you're doing versus maybe how things changed as you started working with myself.
Yeah, well, I think like in general, like especially as like a college athlete, someone who's training on a sports team, even if it's Division I, I think sometimes like it can be a little smoke and mirrors sometimes where you think like, oh, I'm going to go away to a program and do something. And I was blessed with a great strength and conditioning coach at Michigan, but it's difficult when you got a team of 34 guys and having to split up training, and sometimes it can feel a little bit, repetitive. We're doing the same things over, and sometimes I think that the phase training was, depending on what kind of part of the season we were in for our wrestling, peaking for a tournament. Sometimes I felt like we were overdoing it with volume, extra, a little bit too hard of workouts. And sometimes I felt like, where the shift was, obviously where you want to still focus on wrestling, but I felt like we were doing a little too much focusing on the strength and conditioning when, I know you always talk about how it's only a portion of what you need, especially when you're in.
Yeah, I don't know if strength and conditioning coaches would like me to say this, but I believe that strength and conditioning falls into a category that very much supplements and helps, but the best thing we can do is work on our technical skills, becoming a great wrestler. I think when you get to a larger program, there comes some logistical things that we run into, meaning we know that a guy at 125 pounds does not use the same energy sources, he doesn't wrestle the same way as someone like a heavyweight. But when you're a strength and conditioning coach and you got to do it with 40 athletes, you can't really have the specificity to give a 125-pounder a program that they need to get better and that heavyweight. You definitely need to train differently, and that's a huge part of what we do at DL Training Systems. Specificity will drive results, and so you have to make sure that you're training a 125-pound athlete way different than a heavyweight. So that's a good thing to touch on.
Yeah, for sure. I think like that's probably I think specificity and being specific for your training has got to be like the most important thing, especially going now, all right, well, I wrestled in college and now I'm trying to take it to the next level. I'm trying to go wrestle at the World Championships, and I'm now focusing on myself where the training, you're not kind of running through practices like that are just kind of for the group. It's like everything's kind of tailoring around you and how you're going to compete. I feel like that also needs to be taken into effect when it comes to your lifting program, right?
Absolutely, yeah. Let's get into some of the do's and don'ts of strength and conditioning. Let's focus on the do's first. As we look at the do's of strength and conditioning, the one thing I'm going to say is find yourself a coach. Your job is to be an elite wrestler. Your job is to be basically a black belt in jiu-jitsu. You need to know the sport of wrestling. You need to find someone that understands exercise physiology, understands nutrition, understands recovery, and then someone like myself is just lucky enough to also be a physical therapist. So we know how to keep you hopefully healthier and prevent any sort of overuse injuries, things like that. So a big do for me is to find someone that's smarter than yourself. If you are the smartest person in the room, go find a different room.
Yep, I agree. I think like it's one of the biggest things to do is like go at people and try to find help, and sometimes people don't know exactly your sport and they try to help you and they're giving you effort, but sometimes you can lose a lot of effort that way, and energy, it can be pushed in the wrong direction because maybe you are overtraining, and sometimes like I think it's very easily disguised with because you're working hard doesn't mean you're working correct and you're actually getting better. I think that's like in all aspects. You could be, going in just because you're sore after your workouts doesn't mean you did like the proper thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree with that. Most athletes, especially wrestlers, have an innate ability just to grind, and that's great. Their ability to grind sometimes clouds their ability to recover, and we know with any sort of strength and conditioning, we're going to stress some sort of physiological adaptation we're chasing, but your body will never adapt if you don't give it time to recover. I guess we could even tail that into that's a huge don't. All right, so we have this thought that we have to outwork our opponent 24/7, 365. Yep. We got to work while they're sleeping. We got to go do extra. We have to run. Well, that's great, but athletes like that tend to not find success because they don't ever get give their body the ability to recover. So we talk about a do. Why don't you find yourself a highly rated elite strength and conditioning coach? We talk about the don'ts. Do not grind 24/7. You have to tuck in that recovery.
Exactly. I agree totally. I think that's one of the things that we did where I felt like when we started making the switch was like really adapting to, like listening to my body and using that as a feedback to Dylan, I'd be kind of talking to him about how my strength training was going, and also telling him what was on my plan for my workout for that week. If I'm going easier, maybe we could be able to push it a little harder. You could kind of adjust the schedule. But if it's like, hey, I'm in training camp, I've got partners, we're doing a lot of wrestling on the mat, a lot of live wrestling, you're probably going to cut it back for me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we could even go into another do for strength and conditioning. And we talk about we're grinding, but a do for me is to have something to regulate and to give you feedback to know if you are training too hard.
Yep.
So something we did is we added a wearable device, an Oura ring, right?
Yep.
And that Oura ring gives us the ability to look in, because sometimes wrestlers are a little bit too tough. They'll say, oh, I feel great. Well, I have the ability to look at his Oura ring, and if his training readiness score is really, really low, I don't totally care what he says. I start making the changes to hopefully give him just a little bit more recovery so that we can keep you healthy, strong, and adapting towards something that's positive in your sport and in your skill set.
Exactly.
I think a huge don't. So this one is the most important don't. I learned this from the head strength and conditioning coach, Bo Sandoval from the UFC, and I'm going to steal his term, but it's called muddying the water. So we talked about a do. We want a strength and conditioning coach so that we know what to be doing. They're smarter than us. But what most people do is they go on Instagram, they find this cool exercise that works on being explosive. Well, then they go on a 10-mile jog. Well, and then they're going to go work on, 1,000 pull-ups. So what we have is someone that's trying to be explosive while working on maybe their aerobic gas tank while also working on muscular endurance. The reason we call it muddying the waters is that we're chasing every physiological adaptation at once, so it doesn't allow our body to have a robust response. So basically, you're working hard all over the place, but your body doesn't really know what to change because you're giving it so many different stimulus. So a big don't is do not muddy the waters. We're going to try to target 1 to 2 physiological adaptations. When I say that, that means like we're going to work on upper body power.
Yep.
We're going to work on alactic power. Those things kind of go together, and your body's going to take that stimulus, and it's going to give you what you're looking for.
Exactly.
So you're going to get the most bang for your buck if you don't muddy the water. So that's another one there.
I have a pretty good do for strength conditioning, and I think it's probably, this doesn't just fit only into like SC. It also fits into like, how you're trying to build your puzzle for wrestling. Like, obviously, you need to have a right coach or someone that you can go and do private lessons with in wrestling, right? You have to find somebody for that. You have to find someone like you when it goes into strength and conditioning, or having, a coach for you. Also, like having someone that's a nutritionist, or going into someone who knows how to give you the proper supplements and vitamins, and kind of giving you those kind of things. And, just kind of building a support system around you, having good training partners. People like that are all supporting you in every direction, to kind of give you the best to boost you up. I think that's really important. And I know that it's not always the easiest resourcefulness, but finding a good wrestling coach and a good strength coach can kind of always lead you in the right direction, and finding the other resources that you need, finding those little extra bits to help you push you, right?
Yeah, I mean, you need a full interprofessional team. Like I said, you shouldn't be the smartest person in the room, and you shouldn't know everything. So our job, everyone, is to find their niche, what they're really good at, and to provide you the best. And this is a very elite example, right? Because we know if you're in high school, you're not going to probably have a nutritionist and a wrestling coach and a strength and conditioning coach. But when you get to the highest level, it's really important to have those pieces, because we're looking for any advantage we can get within the rule set.
Yep, I agree.
I think a big don't is don't go on Instagram and listen to all of these influencers and their advice on supplementation. Supplementation, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors. So it's marketing. They're going to sell you anything you're willing to buy.
Yep.
Your strength and conditioning coach should be really well versed in science, and you got to be able to read the research to know if it really helps. Another thing with with supplementation is you have to know whether you're really taking what it says you're taking. It has to have that drug-free sport label on there.
Yeah, third-party testing is like extremely important for me, because I'm getting drug tested by WADA, the World Anti-Doping Agency, all the time. A lot of these fighters as well, and even going into college, like it's, when you go into college, you're going to drug test you. So it's really important, especially with supplements. You don't want to just muddy up anything with like putting something in your body thinks okay with some protein that you got from GNC. So
yeah,
right?
Yeah. There's been historically times in the supplement industry where I think the most famous one's Jack 3D. I think it was found to have some sort of amphetamine in it.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so you have to be really careful with what you're taking. It's not monitored by the Food Drug Administration, so it has to be third-party tested, and you have to know what you're putting inside your body.
I agree, and I would say one other thing I'll add on about the don'ts before we wrap up is probably just be careful what you're looking online in general, because, a lot of people are showing for strength and conditioning purposes, for lifting. Not everything's cut out for you and what you need to be better. some people are looking at to be, they're not athletes. They're just trying to get swollen, jacked, and there's other people who are trying to that just are misleading. So you have to just choose wisely and do your research, just do your due diligence before finding that person. So and I'm kind of giving you a cheat code here with Dylan Lemery. I'm sitting here with DL Training Systems right here. Thank you. Great video today, Dylan. Anything else you want to say?
Most importantly, if you want to find out some more information on DL Training Systems, I've helped over 7 world champions, over 30 professional athletes. I've got a national champ from wrestling, national champ, jiu-jitsu, you name it. The list goes on and on. So follow DL Training Systems and get a little bit more information about us.
World champs and everything we do, baby. Let's go.
Let's go.